Hey guys,
Hi.
this is CANRUSH. I'm John, and this is my wife,
Eva.
Eva. Some of you know us better than others, so we'll just sort of explain a little bit, just briefly who we are and tell you what's going on. So I'm from Canada, but I spent 2 years in Ukraine, and I've spent probably about 3 years in Russia. So what we're about to talk about applies to me a lot and to my wife.
I was born in Moscow, Russia, and so I'm Russian. I have Russian citizenship, but I also half of my family they're Ukrainian. So when I introduce myself, I usually say I'm half Russian, half Ukrainian. And
right now we live in Canada.
we live in Canada right now. We did a round-world trip around the world for 2.5 years, and you said about Ukraine that you have connections with Ukrainian, with Russia, because of me with Russian, because you spent 2 years in Ukraine. And I lived in Ukraine for 5 years, approximately 5 years of my life. I lived with my grandmother in a western city, in Ukraine called Khmelnytsky. I spent there. I was a little girl when I lived there, but it was enough to learn language, so I can speak Ukrainian. I can understand Ukrainian. I know many people there. Part of my family lives there, and we have many friends in Ukraine. So this video, we just want to. We kind of don't want to stop filming, don't want to stop publishing new videos, but it feels very unright, very weird, strange, and just I don't know, it feels weird if we will start publishing something not related to the war, because the war takes such a big part of our life, even though we are not there and we don't see bombs. No one is bombing our house, and our friends are alive. But since February 24, 2022, when the war begins, when actually Russia invaded Ukraine, even though the beginning of the war started much earlier in 2014, but and I don't know how deep we should go about the war, but basically when Russia started dropping bombs all over Ukraine, it started this year. And since then our life changed. We started I don't know, it became, I don't know how to describe that. It became more stressed. In those 10 months since the war began, it's almost 10 months since it started, we saw so many things we wish we didn't see. We heard so many stories. We talked to many people who we know personally, who are there or who were in Ukraine and were able to escape. And it just I don't know, it just breaks our hearts, and it just takes the pieces of our soul. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just there in our life, even though we are not in Ukraine. And we just thought we better share our thoughts. Not we don't want to convince anyone about anything. We just want to share our experience, how it was in our family. So
And how it is, yeah. I mean, some of you probably don't know that much about what's happening, and I guess that's okay, but it's probably been hard to not hear at least something about what's happening. So, I mean, if anybody has thought like, oh, I don't really understand what's going on, you know, maybe it's not so simple or something like that, I would just say that from our perspective, everything that we know about what's happening, there is no justification for what Russia is doing in Ukraine. Russia is has invaded. Russia's bombing Ukraine, all of Ukraine, basically, cities all over Ukraine, and they're hitting. I don't think there's any justification for attacking military targets and soldiers in Ukraine, but what's even worse is that they're hitting residential areas. They're destroying infrastructure in Ukraine, and there's no good explanation. No matter how Russian propaganda wants to twist things, there's no good explanation. There's no justification, and it is wrong. We are against it. Obviously, it should be obvious, but unfortunately, there are some people in Russia who are who really believe Russian propaganda. I really don't want to get into what that's all about, but that somehow justify what's happening. It is not okay. We are against it, and we hope that the war ends sooner than later. And we hope that it's kind of weird because, you know, we lived in Russia. My wife is from Russia, but like obviously in this criminal war, we don't want Russia to have success, and we really hope that Ukraine has success. We really hope that this stops. And yes, so this has really affected our family quite a bit since it started. Luckily, our relatives, my wife's relatives in Ukraine and in Russia are safe. I mean, they haven't been injured. Some people have fled, but some people have stayed, and we have family that are in Ukraine now. Mm-hmm. Luckily, they haven't suffered directly from the war, I guess. I don't even know how to. I mean, obviously, everybody is suffering and feeling the effects, right? But their house hasn't been bombed, and they're healthy enough. But just like since it started, right? It just knowing people on both sides. You know, there's wars. There's always some wars going on. It seems like somewhere in the world. But when you don't know people in those places, when you don't have connections to those places, then you know, somehow you don't pay as much attention to it, maybe. But when you know people there, when you've been there, when you've lived there, when you have a connection with people who are there now, it's a big difference. And it's
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just thought to mention that, especially the fact that many people in Russia, they have relatives in Ukraine. So, for example, for me, it's like seeing my dad is killing my mom. Not literally, but it just feels so so painful. Like to see my own country just became a terrorist country, became not just abuser but a killer, and it brings lots of emotional distress, and it's very depressing to see that. Especially depressing. So most of the people I know in Russia and Ukraine, they learned about this war. So people in Ukraine, some people, they actually woke up because they from bombs, from the noise, from the sound of having bombing. I don't know how to say it right.
Yeah, their cities are being bombed. Yeah.
But other
Russian
people
bombs.
whom I know, they in Russia, they woke up and they opened the news, and that's how they learned that Russia declared a war with Ukraine. Even though officially in Russia it was never a war. It was a special military operation.
It's still like illegal to call it a war in Russia.
You don't want to say a word war in Russia, Otherwise, you can go to jail. And it's like, it's not exaggeration. You literally can go to jail if you will say, I'm against war, or I want peace, or things like that. It just, everything is upside down. So it's not just the fact shocking that my country is killing people in my another home country, but also the fact that some of people whom I know, they just found some peace, some justification. They think that it's necessary. They think that that's how Russia protects its territory. Some people they really believe that Russia doesn't do anything bad in Ukraine. They do good stuff. And this is painful, especially when you personally know people like that. And in our case, so I started that some people, they learned from news, but John and I, we just saw how the war began online, like, I don't know,
in real time.
In real time. And I was shocked. I couldn't believe that it's happening. I mean, we knew that something like that might happen, and pretty obvious it will happen, because Russia already had probably 200,000 soldiers near the border with Ukraine. But I just couldn't imagine the how big it will be, how devastating it will be, how many people will lose their homes, how many people will lose their loved ones, or I don't know, just how many lives will be ruined. And even just to witness that. We are in Canada. It's a safe place. I don't feel, like, physically, I don't feel that I don't feel insecure, being insecure, but just to witness that, to watch, you know, those child bodies on the street, to watch, like, in what conditions doctors, nurses, paramedics are working in Ukraine right now, to watch firefighters, to watch, like, those dead soldiers, to talk to families who are waiting for those soldiers to come alive. And it just makes you, like, watching that abuse, watching that the horrible thing in my life, literally, it's the horrible thing in my life, what's going on, what's happening right now. So watching this just makes you a part of this. And yeah, I never felt so stressed in all my life how I feel in those 10 months. And even though our life is good, we have 2 kids. So since we finished our round the world trip, we had a girl and then we had a boy. So we have 2 kids. They are 2 years apart. Girl, she's 3 years old. Her name is Evita, 3.5, and the boy, he's 1.5. His name is Ivan. And we have many moments to share, and we have many plans, but sometimes it just feels that the world is just crashing. Yeah, I also wanted to say that there are people in Russia who stand with Ukraine. They hate Putin, they hate this war, and they just but not all of them, unfortunately. And I don't know what else we can say in this video.
Well, yeah, I think most Russians would be against the war if they understood what's really happening, but unfortunately the propaganda doesn't tell them what's actually happening. And yeah, there are millions and millions of Russians who are against the war. I hope it's tens of millions, but who knows? And so many have left. So many people that we know have left Russia, and they're not planning on coming back anytime soon. As long as Putin and his government are in power, it's not a good place to be. And obviously, you know, so many people that we know in Ukraine have left, although not all of them. We basically just wanted to sort of state our position, say something about the war, because a lot of YouTubers, a lot of public people in Russia are quiet about it. Some of them just completely sort of disappeared, and some people just sort of continue to publish content without saying anything. And I know that, you know, people that have stayed in Russia are afraid of getting in trouble, because you really could, like this video, even what we're telling you now, you could go to jail for this in Russia. Luckily we're not in Russia, and we're not planning to go there anytime soon, but we don't want to be one of those people who don't say anything. So we love Ukrainians, we love Ukraine, we love lots of Russians too, and so it's really tough. We support Ukraine. We want yeah, we want this to stop, and yeah. So if I'm sure that this is like something that a lot of you like is like really foreign to you, what the stuff that we're talking about here. So I don't know. Look into it more if you're interested. That some people I'm sure would be really interested to talk more about this. I don't know that we're gonna like get into trying to like teach people about what's happening, or about like Russian-Ukrainian history or news and current events, but yeah, I mean, for people that care, thank you, and yeah, do what you can to support Ukrainians in Ukraine, and Ukrainians that are probably somewhere near you now. There's lots of Ukrainians here in Canada, and it's been really interesting to meet them and try to help them out a little bit here as they try to adapt, as they, you know, fled the war. Yeah, I don't know. We will post some new videos here eventually, someday, and they might not all be about the war, but just we want you guys to know that this is a really tragic thing that's happening, and it's affecting us, and yeah, that's about it, I think. So thanks for watching, and write comments, and if you have any thoughts or personal stories, and yeah, we'll read them, and maybe we'll respond in some way, but that's it for now. Bye bye.